In the school of architecture, I never took salary that I got 800 rupees. I never took it home for all those 20 years when I was in the beginning of my career. It's a temple. How can you do it? How can you take money from the temple?
I think it's wonderful what Doshi has achieved as well. I mean, that's the best school in India, and it started from scratch. And it has its educational component, and I think there were people like Bernard Cohn and Rasu Vakil and many others who made huge contributions. But the essential contribution, I think, was the bridge between Doshi and Kasturbai Lalbai. And people don't realize how important that is. Without that school wouldn't have happened, without Kasturbai's backing. I mean, you have to be a bit of an empire builder and have somebody backing you to do something as marvelous as SEPT, you know. And so a lot of the credit absolutely goes to Doshi, because regardless of what else happened, it's he who was the basic driver of that project.
His ability to kind of intuitively respond to painting, to visuals, to a landscape, to other architecture, and then to convert those sort of intuitive readings into a narrative that would just engage a young student is absolutely incredible.
After my parents and grandparents, if an individual has had a role to play in my life, it's Doshi.
He's able to talk to any level of person. He can talk to a peon or a driver for 2 hours at a stretch, and he can talk to a minister as required. And he is aware of all these levels of society. That, combined with this rigor, I think gave him a certain distinct standing in the way in which he looked at architecture.
I've learned from Doshi the way to be yourself, always.
The thing about him is that he doesn't carry himself as a persona. He just be with somebody. Now, to my mind, a cultured person is one in whose company you feel neither inferior or superior. That is Doshi.
My career has evolved over time, and one of the most significant beginning was with Indology. So Kasturbai Lalbai said, I have a lot of manuscripts which have come from this Jain Muni, Jin Vijayji Maharaj and Punya Vijayji Maharaj, and they are to be preserved. So why don't you do this project? And that time in '58 I was going abroad. I had got this Graham Fellowship with my wife. She says, if you are going to USA, go and see Duke University, and they have a place for preservation of monuments, these manuscripts. So please have a look at it. And I remembered that in Patan and other places, they were always preserving monuments in the basement. So I said, doesn't matter, we will make a basement and then we will make this place. She says, that's fine, then it is good. Which means one of the first time, I mean it is by beginning, I began to understand what climate can do. 1960s. When the opening was there were people standing in the balcony, sadhus and others. The water was overflowing from the terrace tank down in the pipe and came to that gargoyle which you see there, both sides, and so it looked like really a boat in water. And this is how this building was visualized, and this was the time it looked like that. So it is not only the shading of the light, etc., sunlight, it is not cooling only, but it also became part of the water and the floating area. So if you see the profile on the side, you will see the shape which goes like this, lifted up. In Tange's work, I found concrete used as wood. I said, that's not a bad idea, we should do really concrete like wood. And the services can go into the column. So the H-shaped column came, one side drain pipes for the rain waters, other side electricity, and then large span, and then this structure, concrete structure. So that's how this building happened. It's the first one. I don't think many buildings are like this there. The upper balcony little pieces are all precast. In fact, the detailing is very much like wood. It's one of the best detailed buildings that way. Very well done, in a sense. It has a quality, which is very different. It stands apart. I was new. I had no background. I was with my wife. Why, you talk about this, the museum building when we were supervising, one Mr. Kinney from Bombay, engineer, said that this cavity wall cannot be built like this. So he says, why don't you change it to load bearing wall? I refuse. So the Katawala, the engineer says, why don't we call Mr. Doshi? So he called me, I said, no, I don't think I would like to change that plan. You can't change it. So then they says, well, then we will get somebody else. I said, then I'm resigned. I resigned the job which was giving me 250 or 400 rupees per month. I had already completed 2 jobs. I was only getting 150 rupees, 65 rupees was rent. I had colitis, I had to go to the Bombay and get doctor's medicine. I had no money to live. So practice starts like this. I used to bicycle almost 18 to 20 kilometers minimum. From there to Shahi Bagh, to come back to Milonas, go to museum and Shodhan house and back home. Every day. So difficulties were there, but because I had not thought about, you see, it's a question of when you have a role model, you have a problem. You have comparison, then you have a problem. When you think that this is the only way you can survive, then you have a problem. And when I went to Paris, Corbusier did not pay me for 8 months. And I had hardly any money. I had very little money. I went against my brother's wish to Paris. I was not able to speak. 8 months with olive and cheese and bread, that's all. Crying. So this is how the practice was, and I was having colitis that time and I was having pain. But something had happened, I still don't know what it is. And that's what keeps me going even today. That this idea that no, I have to do something which is right, what happens if he asks me a question?